Welcome back for tuning into today's second video. We're going to have a look at the winter of 95-96. Today, of course, we've already seen the summer of 1995 earlier on, the first historic video today. But the second part is now with us, and yeah, we're going to have a look at the winter of 95-96. I see the summer of 95 and the winter of 95-96 as kind of a duo, really, and that's why I've decided to do both the videos for you today. Now, before I get on with the video, I just want to mention a couple of things. Just want to say I've got a bit of a croaky voice just at the moment, so I've got my glass of water with me. I may have to stop and have a quick sip of water. I hope you'll bear with me if I do, just to lubricate the vocal cords. Also want to mention the websites we're using for the historic video. None of my historic videos would be possible without these websites. We've got the charts coming from the Historic Archive at wettercentral.de, and that archive goes right way back to the 1st of January 1871. Would you believe? Incredible resource of information at Wetter Central in the Historic Archive. Also, the information, much of the information you hear in this video is going to come from Trevor Harley's personal weather website. You can find Trevor Harley's personal weather website, or the link to it, on my links page, and that's the case for the wettercentral.de. Both of those websites, you can find the link to both of them on my links page. And in all seriousness, none of my historic videos would be possible without these two fantastic websites. So do go to websites, see everything for yourself, support those websites, and as I say, you're supporting Gaz Weathers by doing that, because I wouldn't be able to do any of this with the historic videos without Trevor Harley and wettercentral.de. Also want to mention the advertising. You know it by now, but I've got to assume that some people are tuning in for the first time. So there's green keyword ads on my pages at gazweathers.com. If you roll your cursor over the green keywords, they'll display ads, but if you click through the words, you'll go to the advertised website, and you'll be supporting gazweathervids.com by doing that. So we come to the winter of 95-96 on the back of a very hot period, and of course, if you were watching the summer historic video, we finished in October, which was a hot month, and I said that actually it'd be 12 months from the 1st of November 1994 to the 1st of November 1995 was the warmest 12 months on record in terms of the central England temperature. I think we beat that actually in 2006-2007, so we have beaten that record, but up to that point it was the warmest 12-monthly period since 1659, and this was in an incredibly warm period anyway. Cold winters were very, very rare. In around 8 or 9 years, we'd only had one cold winter, which was 1990-1991. Most of the winters of the late 1980s and 1990s were mild. And there was no reason really for 95-96 to assume that this winter would be any different. And certainly I was expecting that we'd have yet another mild winter with the Atlantic holding sway and snow would be very limited, but boy was I in for a surprise. And I think we all had a bit of a surprise in 95-96 because, as I say, it's been such a warm period. Cold, you can't imagine it now really, because we had so many cold winters up to the point where I'm doing this in 2013. So many of the winters just recently have been cold and average, but in this era, if you didn't live through this era, it'd be hard to understand really how exceptional cold winter and snow was becoming really through this period in the British Isles. The 1990s was generally quite a snowless decade, starting from around 1988 and going through to something like 2002. It was just so unusual to get a cold and snowy winter, and as I say, this was a big surprise for all of us. So we're going to start the story of the winter of 95-96 on the 1st of December 1995, and we've got high pressure here sitting to the east, low pressure is out west in the Atlantic. This is always a sign of trouble when you get high pressure blocking to the east and low pressure stalling in the middle Atlantic. It's always a sign that things are not really running as they should be, because normally in a zonal winter you'll get the low pressure rattling through from Greenland to Iceland to the north of Scandinavia. That's what we'd had so often through the 1990s. But this is just a sign that things are a little bit different in terms of the atmospheric setup. But this actual opening of the month of December 1995 was quite mild, to be honest, and there was quite a bit of rain. We've got weather fronts coming up against its high pressure and stalling, so there's a lot of rain through the 1st into the 3rd. Weather fronts strung out across the country, producing quite a lot of rain. We've got gloomy skies, mist, fog, very damp, dreary conditions, but you can clearly see what's going on here on the 3rd of December 95. We've got the high pressure over Scandinavia, we've got the low pressure around Iceland. We're sending warm air advection, WAA, up into the Arctic, and that's just helping to inflate this area of high pressure up over Scandinavia. Classic sort of prelude, this chart is, to a Scandinavian high, because the warm air shooting up into the Arctic is then inflating the high pressure to the east. As we go through to the 4th, what happens? Well, the trough begins to split, the high pressure over Scandinavia starts to take over, we begin to pull the winds in from the east, and here we go, it's going to the 5th. Yep, we're in an easterly wind. This was the first real easterly wind that we'd had. Well, it had a very brief easterly in February 1994, but it was the first extended sort of easterly that lasted over several days since February 1991, and before that you'd have to go back to 1987, January 1987, to find another extended easterly. So these areas of high pressure over Scandinavia at this time period were really as rare as hen's teeth. It wasn't something that I was used to seeing when I saw the BBC forecast showing this. It's kind of a heart in the mouth type situation, really. Very, very shocking to see high pressure back over Scandinavia after so many years of it missing. So there we go, on the 5th of December, we're in this easterly wind, we're pulling in bitterly cold air from the east, temperatures are barely above freezing, and we've got snow showers pushing onto the eastern side, and this is really setting us up, setting the groundwork for what's going to happen for the rest of the month, because it is going to be a cold month. Say it has a central England temperature, December 1995, of just 2.3. Up to that point, it was the coldest since 1981. Now, of course, in 2010, we beat both 95 and 2001 with that extraordinary cold December, but at this point it was a bit of a shock, really, what happened in December 95. So here we go on the 6th, we're in an easterly wind, we're bringing snow showers into the east, and temperatures are barely above freezing, and the EC is maintained into the 7th as well. So we have 3 days across many parts of the country with snow showers being blown in from the east, almost unheard of since February 1991. Now, as we move through to the 8th, the end of the first week, we're starting to turn everything slack, so then the focus is shifting more from snow showers in towards frost and fog. There's some really hard frost during this period, with temperatures getting as low as -7, -8, -10 actually, in some places with quite a lot of ice. We build that high pressure in across the country then as we move through into December. Now, throughout this winter, you're always expecting it to turn mild, because that really is what we've been used to. We've been used to mild winters, so surely this was going to be the end of it. It was just a pretty cold snap, and now the westerlies are returning. That's what I thought was happening here on the 10th of December 1995. Was it? No, actually the high pressure is just repositioning itself. It ends up sitting to the northwest of Scotland, bringing down this not particularly cold but pretty dank, miserable sort of northeasterly flow across the country. And that's how we go into the middle of the month with the high pressure to the north of Scotland, and we are bringing in an easterly wind across England and Wales, so it's bitterly cold for the south. But to be honest, temperatures aren't that cold. We're around 3, 4, 5 degrees, something like that. Now, look what happens as we get through to the 18th. There's been a very clear retrogression of the high pressure. There's the high pressure on the 15th into the north of Scotland. Look where it is on, sorry, I've gone backwards. Look where it is on the 18th of December. It's gone up towards Greenland and Iceland. And this develops and sets us up for the coldest part of the winter. So far from westerlies re-establishing and mild air coming in, actually things are getting more severe now in terms of the synoptic pattern, if not particularly with the weather. And what goes on through this period leading up to Christmas, we have a big battle going on. We've got really cold air trying to come down from the north. We've got low pressure out in the Atlantic. Notice there's no Azores high. The Azores high was extraordinarily dominant throughout the whole of the 1990s varieties, but just for this one winter, it kind of goes on holiday and it disappears, and very unusual sort of pattern that for the era. Of course, not unusual now when I'm doing this video. We're used to seeing a negative North Atlantic oscillation, but at that time, mid-90s, very, very unusual. So we've got weather fronts pushing up from the south, coming into this cold air pushing down from the north, and we get a snow event across many parts of the country through the 20th into the 21st. We find weather fronts pushing northwards and eastwards into that cold air, bringing snow. The snow on the 21st was really for England and Wales, gave a few inches for many places. And as we go through to the 22nd, we actually find that snow then pushing up into northern England and Scotland. Notice the high pressure has weakened a little bit over Greenland, but it's still there in control. And actually, it is turning milder from the south. We do briefly push up a milder airflow through the 22nd and 23rd. We actually get temperatures up to 10, 11, 12 degrees across the south through the 22nd and just into the 23rd with this area of low pressure. But the cold air never goes from Scotland and northern England, and this low pressure is eventually going to push eastwards through the 23rd and reintroduce very, very cold air coming down from the north. So as we go through to Christmas Eve, yet the low pressure's gone eastwards into Central Europe. We've opened the floodgates to the Arctic, and cold air is flooding southwards across the country. So we have temperatures up to 10 degrees early on the 23rd. By the end of the 23rd and into the early hours of Christmas Eve, many places are back below freezing once again. All of that rain that fell through that period from the 21st to the 23rd froze. There was a lot of ice, and this northerly to northeast wind is introducing a lot of snow in towards Shetland. And you may remember that as we go through to Christmas, we get these polar low features developing up over northern Scotland. And Shetland was actually declared a state of emergency, a national disaster area, through this Christmas week. I shouldn't laugh, but extraordinary, really, that could happen in such a warm era that you would get parts of the British Isles being declared a national emergency from snowfall. Again, it's just the weather telling us that whenever we think we've got it sussed, whenever we think we've got it pinned down, we know what's going to happen next, we're going to get a surprise, and the weather's going to do something incredible, and it did through this period. So on Christmas Day, we've opened the northerly and northeasterly winds, Arctic air flooding southwards. Temperatures are barely above freezing anywhere from northern England into Scotland. We're seeing temperatures hovering around -3, -4, and it's only going to get colder. And yet we're bringing really heavy snow into the north of Scotland as well. National emergency in Shetland. As we move through to Boxing Day, well, yeah, we've got the northerly wind there flooding down across the country. Many areas are actually dry further south. Not much snow is falling, but it's bitterly cold with hard frost and temperatures struggling to get above freezing. But further north, it's a very snowy scene from northern England into Scotland and Northern Ireland. Lots of snow showers, and again, the focus for this snow is the far north of Scotland, where they really are being hit very, very, very hard. Now, as we move through to the 27th, we begin to find the risk of the snow easing back towards the coast under this ridge of high pressure. But now we've got incredibly severely cold air across many parts of the country. So it's just going to get colder and colder and colder now as we run through the 27th into the 28th and the 29th. That high pressure is holding firm over the country. There's freezing fog with that. So temperatures by day for some parts of northern England and Scotland are not getting above -8, -9, -10. Some places are staying at -10 degrees all day and lower in places under this area of high pressure. By night, we've seen temperatures falling to -20, -25. It's getting extraordinarily cold, particularly, again, focused for Scotland, but severe pipe-bursting frost. And as we go through to the 29th and on into the 30th, we're actually going to get the peak of the cold then for Scotland. We're going to get temperatures in the early hours of the 30th of December 1995 in Aotearoa dropping to minus 27.2. That is an equal record with January 1982. So, yeah, the 30th of December 1995, or the night of the 29th into the 30th of December 1995, is equal with January 1982 for the all-time United Kingdom low temperature record. And were it not for this area of low pressure out in the Atlantic beginning to move in and starting to just stir the air a little bit, it's quite possible if this had gone on another 24 hours, but somewhere in Scotland, probably Aotearoa, would have seen temperatures down to minus 30. That would have been an extraordinary record, but it wasn't to be because this low pressure is starting to change things. The high pressure is beginning to slip to the east. We're beginning to push weather fronts in. This is bringing an area of heavy snow and freezing rain in across the country. I remember it being very icy through the new year of 95-96, but we're going to lose the cold air for a while now. We're going to push low pressure through. A classic sort of retreat of the cold air going on here. This low pressure bringing Atlantic air in. Was a struggle. There was freezing rain, there was ice, there was snow, but eventually as we go through to January, to New Year's Day, we're going to find the cold air increasingly retreating away to the north and the northeast. And this area of low pressure in the Atlantic is going to take control. So as we go through to the 4th of January 96, we're back in a mild flow there, which still blocked really the high pressures to the east again and the low pressure to the west. This is kind of how we started December 95 actually. We start January 96 on a very similar note, but that December of 1995 really was quite incredible for the era in which it occurred. Now, as we move on to January, what's interesting about January is it was quite a mildish sort of month actually. It wasn't a cold month, it had a central temperature of 4.8. It was mostly mild until the end when the easterlies are going to re-establish. So very unsettled start to January 1996 with low pressure in the Atlantic pushing weather fronts in, the high pressure out to the east and northeast very much in retreat through this early period of the month into the 10th on into the 13th. It's very Atlantic dominated. This was the most extended period of mild weather through this period, and my view at this time, young little forecaster that I was at just the age of 18, was that this was it now. We was into a mild flow, and the pattern that we've been used to through the 1990s was re-establishing. All the cold air had gone. December 95 had been a big one-off, and yeah, everything was back to normal. It wasn't. And as we go through to the 15th, look what's happening. The low pressure is starting to stall out in the Atlantic again. The high pressure is beginning to build back to the east again. We're in a southerly flow, but it's very slack. We've got a lot of fog now starting to develop with this. We're beginning to see lots of gloom, lots of fog. I say it was a very gloomy winter, 95-96. Really did struggle to get the sun. And this period through the middle of January 96 was particularly gloomy, miserable and murky. But notice what's happened, gone to the 18th, and the heights are building all the time to the east. We've got 1,030 millibar high pressure over Scandinavia as well. The polar vortex over Greenland that you would assume is bringing the mild westerlies back is stalling. And look what happens. We go through to the 21st, and yet we're back there again. The high pressure has formed over Scandinavia. The low pressure has become cut off down around Portugal and down into the Azores. So the North Atlantic Oscillation is going negative again. And this area of high pressure out in the Atlantic is ridging with this area of high pressure over Scandinavia, pulling us back into an easterly flow. Now this period through the 22nd and on into the 23rd is very interesting, and the event that occurs here is perhaps the most severe event of the winter of 95-96 for England and Wales. Certainly for Scotland, the snow in Christmas week was the most severe, and the cold temperature, the pipe bursting frost was most severe weather. But for England and Wales, I think this probably is the most severe spell, and it's not snow bringing this, it's freezing rain, because this area of low pressure is pushing weather fronts up. The cold air over Scandinavia is bringing cold air in. So we've got very cold air, very cold continental low-level dense air with warmer air aloft pushing up from the south. A classic sort of scenario for freezing rain and ice. And this night from the 23rd into the 24th was when we get that very severe freezing rain event. Now, if you've not seen freezing rain, and it isn't something that's particularly common in the British Isles, it really is quite extraordinary. And this, that evening of the 23rd, I remember going to bed, and I thought it was just raining, just pouring with rain, and as I lay in bed I sort of heard this drumming sort of noise. It was quite extraordinary sort of noise. You would think it's like hail, but it isn't really. It's like a drumming sort of effect, and it is different to hail. It's hard to explain it, but it's it's not as violent really as hail. It's more of a peaceful sound than hail, and it's certainly something I hadn't heard before. I'd heard hail falling a lot, but this was something different. So I got up and looked out, and I looked under the lights and could just see the rain coming down. Didn't really twig what was going on until I just about shut the back door, and I noticed that the path outside the back door had this glaze on it, this glaze of ice, and of course then I realised what was happening. The rain was falling down onto the path, and it was freezing as it hit the path. The temperature on the ground had gone below freezing, the rain was falling on top of it, heavy rain as well, and it was creating this glaze. And by the time I got up on the morning of the 24th of January 1996, the rain had gone, but we'd been left with this incredible sheet ice. It was like everything was covered in a thick sheet of glass. It was quite extraordinary, quite beautiful, but extraordinarily dangerous. Many people fell over, slipped over, broke legs, broke arms. There was lots of accidents on the road, really horrendously treacherous. And some parts actually had their power brought down. Here we did have the glaze laying very thick on the power lines, but the power lines were just strong enough to hold it. But I know some parts of the country, particularly South Wales and I think South West England, did see the power line being brought down by the weight of that sheet ice. But quite extraordinary, and I've never seen it since. Actually, it's very rare for the British Isles to get a freezing rain event like that, and it was really one of those things that stick in the memory, because it's very unusual to see that thick glass type effect on all the surfaces. Now, as we go through to the 25th, we lose all of that freezing rain. Now we're in a proper easterly wind again, bringing in that easterly flow across the country. It's heavy snow pushing back in from the east, from the 25th into the 26th. Temperatures are down below freezing for many of us once again. It's bitterly cold with that easterly wind, and yet we're bringing snow back in. So December 95 wasn't a one-off. We're back into it in January 1996, and many places are getting snow and bitterly cold temperatures. Now, as we move through to the end of January 96, eventually the high pressure sort of sitting over the top of the country, and we're again shifting away from snow and on towards cold weather. But that certainly isn't the end of the snow by any means, because going to February we're going to get more snow, and it's going to happen through low pressure coming in off the Atlantic up against cold air. So on the 4th of February 96 we're under this ridge of high pressure, very cold air underneath that. Temperatures are barely above freezing. As we move through to the 5th, yep, you can see what's happening. The high pressure is slipping to the east. We've got a legacy of cold, dense air over the country, but low pressure trying to come in from the Atlantic. This is a classic battleground situation that can produce heavy snow, and that's exactly what happens. But low pressure comes up against that cold, dense air on the night of the 5th into the 6th, and it produces heavy snow. This is more particularly for Midlands, Wales, Northern England, Scotland, where we see anything up to 20 centimetres of snow quite widely, 10 centimetres even down to below ground here where I am in Northamptonshire. And we've got strong southerly winds as well, blowing that snow around. There was a lot of drifting of the snow up across Scotland and Northern England in particular. And we keep it cold and wintry for quite a few days after that. Again, high pressures over Scandinavia is the dominating factor. These low pressures are trying to come in, but sort of slipping southwards and producing more snow in places. But as we go through to the 10th, then we do break the Atlantic through with this deep area of low pressure. This brings blizzards across many parts of the country through the course of the 9th into the 10th. Blizzards sweep the country, but it turns much, much milder and we do get a westerly flow re-establishing. But that isn't the end of the cold weather or the snow either, because we go on to the 14th, got a ridge of high pressure. Look what's going to happen next. The high pressure will pull out into the Atlantic on the 16th, into the 17th. Low pressure going to dive southwards through the North Sea, bring cold air in. We've got very cold air over Scandinavia. Cold air is coming back in on the 17th. Another area of low pressure going to dive southwards, and there we go. It's going to the 19th. We're back into an east or northeasterly flow once again. This is bringing more snow into the east with gale force easterly winds and a severe wind chill factor. And as I said, we're used to seeing these sort of synoptics now, with low pressure diving southwards and pulling winds in from the northeast, snow coming in from the east, but wind backing away to the Urals. We're used to it now. We've had it for a number of winters, but back then this was such a shock to see low pressure diving from Greenland and Iceland to be sitting over Germany. A huge shock through this period, and that's really why I'm doing this video, because I want to emphasise that in this era this was a very surprising and very shocking sort of winter. On the 20th of February 96, we've opened the floodgates to the east or northeasterly wind, and the high pressure there is out in the west, and that's how we're going to end February 96. We're going to end the winter with high pressure over the country, still giving us frost, but the risk of snow is easing off. But this is at the end of the snow, because as we move through into March, we're going to have more snow events. We're going to see high pressure at the start of March, sitting out to the west and the northwest. As we move through to the 5th and then on into the 9th, high pressure re-establishing over Scandinavia, beginning to pull the winds back into the east again. The easterly winds starting to come back, so you get the idea. It's a very easterly winter into the spring. We've got the easterly winds constantly with us, on and off really. Sometimes you get moderation, but the easterly very much dominating. And as we move through to the 10th and on into the 11th, we're going to find low pressure pushing back in again off the Atlantic, coming up against that cold air. So the night of the 11th into the 12th, yeah, we've got weather fronts here across the country. It's in cold air. More snow is occurring across many parts of the British Isles once again, and the high pressure over Scandinavia actually wins the battle. So on the 13th, we move that high pressure away to the south and southeast. We reintroduce those easy winds across the country. 13th March, a very sad day because of the shooting in Dunblane. As we move through beyond that into the 18th of March 96, and then beyond that we're going to see the high pressure still maintained, so it's another cold month. March 1996 was a cold month, has central temperature of 4.5. Generally wasn't that much snow after about 11th, 12th snow event, but there was snow in some places with these easy winds. But the main thing again is the blocking up to the north and the northeast, and that blocking high pressure is still more or less with us as we go through to the end of March 1996. And then finally we get to April, and the winter is going to end now. The long winter is drawing to a close, but we're still cold for the start of April 96. We've got hard frost going on still, with temperatures well below freezing by night in many places, and well below where they should be by day. And we're going to get one last snow event here across parts of the country as we move through into the 12th and the 13th of April. It's going to come again, you've guessed it, from a Scandinavian high. So the Greenland high was very much absent really through this winter. It all relies on the Scandinavian high, except for that extremely cold and severe Christmas week. That was brought about by the Greenland high and the snow across Scotland and the pipe bursting frost through Christmas up to the New Year. That was the Greenland high, but the rest of it is the Scandinavian high, and there wasn't much happening over Greenland, to be honest. But again, we've got more weather fronts coming up against this Scandinavian high through the 11th and on into the 12th. We've got more cold air being fed in from the east, weather fronts grinding to a halt against that cold air. More heavy snow is falling across the country from the night of the 12th into the 13th. There was around 2 inches of snow across parts of the Midlands, northwards in towards northern England. But that was the last snow event of the winter spring of 95-96. And what's going to happen next, just again to show you that the perverse nature of the British weather, and it's been so cold, it's been cold, it's been snow on and off all winter. We're going to get to the 20th of April 1996, and we're going to see the temperatures shooting up with this southerly wind. We're going to waft hot air in from the south, would you believe, just very briefly. We're going to get temperatures up to 25, 26, 27 degrees after just a week ago under freezing temperatures and snow. We're going to have temperatures in the 80s Fahrenheit. Actually, just to the east, over much of France, the Low Countries and Germany, you've guessed what happens there. We have record-breaking heat after all of that cold weather. And again, it's the weather having a laugh with us. We thought we were stuck in this never-ending regime of cold weather. And very briefly, through April 96, just a week or so after snow, we bring temperatures up into the 80s from a southerly wafting up from the Mediterranean. You couldn't make it up, could you? Actually, that wasn't the start of a hot spell by any means. It very quickly broke down. May 96 was really cold. May 1996, won't look at the charts, but May 1996 was the coldest May since 1902 and one of the coldest on record. Well, that's it. That's us looked at the whole of the period from 95-96. Hope you found it interesting. Hope it's brought back a few weather memories for you. And that's all that's left to say, really. I hope you've enjoyed the historic videos today for Bank Holiday Monday. Everything's going to be back to normal tomorrow at Gaz Weather Vids. We'll be doing proper look-ahead forecasts, and that's it, really. So, thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking with the historic videos. Enjoy what's left of your Bank Holiday Monday. And that's it for now. Thanks for watching.